But yeah, I just wanted to ask both of you about what got you interested in this story and why you think it's an important story, and also why you think the media is so afraid of touching it.
I'll let Margaret go.
Well, it was clear to me that Assange was considered an enemy of politicians and even of the corporate media, even though he himself is a journalist, because he doesn't play by the rules. He exposed what powerful people did not want to expose. And there's so many so-called journalists who are complicit, so they didn't like that at all. Putting the rest of them to shame, doing what the rest of them should have been doing. And he made a lot of enemies. The release of the Iraq war logs was, everyone could see what the U.S., and yesterday was the anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, we have to point out, could see the crimes that the U.S. was committing in this country that we were told we were saving by bombing them or whatever. And that is how he came to be an enemy. In the 2016 election, he played a role in embarrassing Hillary Clinton. All he did, because someone leaked to him, that's a whole other story, information, he was able to embarrass her and tell the truth about her. And when she lost, it was easy for them to make him an enemy again and to make him someone that people would hate. And the rape charge, by the way, he was never charged with rape in Sweden, ever. It was the United States pressuring Sweden to make it look like he was a rapist. So he's a rapist who brought us Donald Trump. Well, so that is how he came to be so heartily disliked, and why I was always a defender of his cause. I have always defended people who tell us what we need to be told, and that means making enemies of the powerful.
So Margaret raises the Iraqi war logs. They came out in October 2010. These were the material, including videos, images of the gunning down of 2 Reuters journalists and 10 other unarmed civilians as so-called collateral murder video. It exposed the torture of Iraqi prisoners. It exposed the covering up of thousands of civilian deaths, including the killing of the documentation of the killing of over 700 civilians who had approached too closely to U.S. checkpoints. And immediately after the release of the Iraqi war logs, the great civil rights attorney, Michael Ratner, along with another towering civil rights attorney, Len Weinglass, who had defended Daniel Ellsberg in the Pentagon Papers case, flew to London and asked for a meeting with Julian. Now, Julian had just come back from Sweden, and he'd been in Sweden because he was attempting to create a legal framework to protect WikiLeaks servers in Sweden. As soon as he got to Stockholm, or shortly after he got to Stockholm, all of his personal bank cards were blocked. So he had no access to funds at all. And he was dependent on supporters. 2 of them were women with whom he had consensual sex. As he was preparing to leave, the Swedish media announced that he was wanted for questioning about allegations of rape, which neither of the women ever charged. They never accused him of rape. They wanted him to take an STD test, and they'd approached the police about asking him to comply. And one of the women, in fact, said that she was railroaded by the police to making a charge. 24 hours later, the chief prosecutor of Stockholm takes over the preliminary investigation. She drops the rape accusation and said that there's no evidence that he committed rape. And so although he's not charged with a crime, Julian canceled his departure. He stayed in Sweden for another 5 weeks to cooperate. They appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the allegations. He was granted permission to leave the country, and then he went to Britain, and that's where Len and Michael Ratner met him. On the way to Britain, he flew to Berlin, and when he arrived in Berlin, 3 of his encrypted laptops with documents detailing war crimes disappeared from his luggage. So Michael and Len pressed Julian for a meeting in London because they immediately saw that the Swedish allegations were a distraction. They had read the police reports. They knew there was no case. What they did know, because especially Michael had been spending decades fighting on behalf of Attica prisoners. He organized all of the attorneys to defend those held in Guantanamo. He knew precisely what the empire was going to do, and that was crucify Julian. And it was he who recommended that Julian not go back to Sweden because he would be extradited. This actually came as a surprise to Julian. And they laid out to him that he would be charged under the Espionage Act, which is the 1917 equivalent of our Foreign Secrets Act. So from the moment that the Iraqi war logs came out, it was clear, and I was very close to Michael and flew to London to visit Julian with Michael. It was very clear that the empire was going to mount a no-holds-barred campaign because Julian, and through his own courage and the courage of Chelsea Manning, had shown a light into the machinery of empire and the war crimes that they had committed, and that, of course, turned out to be sadly prescient. And so I've long been a supporter of Julian, and of course know him and understand the severity of his persecution, because it's really an attack on the entire press. I'll just add one more caveat. People talk about The Guardian, El País, Der Spiegel, the New York Times publishing this material. I spent 15 years at the New York Times. The reason they published the material is because they knew it would be published in the alternative press if they turned it down, and they would be exposed as handmaidens of the imperial and the corporate state. And so everybody asks the question, well, how can The Guardian, how can the New York Times, how can they turn on Julian, which they did immediately after they published the material that was shared with them? Well, it's because they always hated him from the beginning. And it's traditionally, if you look closely, it's always been the alternative media throughout history that has shamed the corporate press into doing their job. So they had no choice. They knew that they would be exposed as bankrupt if they somehow refused to publish that information. And yet, on the other hand, from the beginning, there was a deep animus towards Julian, which is why, of course, they've refused to defend him, although the legal precedent that would be set if he's brought back, Julian's not an American citizen, WikiLeaks is not a US-based publication, the legal precedent that would be set would be devastating for what's left of our very anemic press.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.